The Great Hall of Thessara Prime was the most beautiful place in the galaxy. Crystal pillars rose toward a ceiling that showed the stars themselves. Gold and silver decorated every wall. Thousands of lights floated in the air like tiny suns. Every year, the noble houses of 100 worlds gathered here for the bonding ceremony. Princes and heirs from powerful families would choose companions from other worlds. These bonds created alliances. They brought peace between empires. They were the most important political events in the galaxy. Princess Myra Valdris stood at the far edge of the hall, trying to hide behind a pillar. She was 17 years old by Earth counting. Among her people, she was still considered a child. But that was not why she was hiding. Myra was different from her sisters, very different. Her father, Emperor Valdris, ruled one of the largest empires in the known galaxy. The Valdrossian people were tall and magnificent. They had 4 arms and skin that glowed with soft blue light. They lived for 500 years. They were strong, beautiful, and proud. Myra's mother had been human. The emperor had taken a human woman as a concubine during a diplomatic visit to Earth. It was meant to be a small gesture of friendship toward the new species that had just joined galactic society. No one expected a child, and no one expected the mother to die giving birth. So Myra grew up in the imperial palace as a constant reminder of her father's mistake. She had only 2 arms instead of 4. Her skin did not glow. She was short, barely reaching the chest of her youngest sister. She would live maybe 80 years while her siblings would live for centuries. She was, in every way that mattered to the Valdrossian court, defective. Now she stood in the great hall and watched as the ceremony began. Her eldest sister, Princess Thara, stepped forward first. She was magnificent. Her 4 arms moved with perfect grace. Her skin glowed like a blue star. The Cathari prince, a powerful reptilian creature with scales of black and gold, chose her immediately. The crowd cheered. One by one, Myra's other sisters were chosen. Princess Vila went to the heir of the Dominion. Princess Cassa was selected by a wealthy merchant lord. Princess Una bonded with the son of a famous admiral. Princess Dina and Princess Laura found their matches among the lesser noble houses. Each time, Myra felt smaller. The hours passed. More selections were made. Young nobles from across the galaxy found their companions. But no one looked at Myra. No one even glanced in her direction. She heard whispers as creatures walked past her. "Is that the half-breed? So small, so fragile. Why did the emperor even bring her? It is embarrassing. She will be dead in 50 years anyway. Who would want such a short-lived companion?" Myra kept her face still. She had learned long ago not to cry in public. Tears only made things worse. They only proved that she was weak, emotional, human. By evening, the great hall had grown quiet. Most of the selections were complete. The noble families were leaving for celebration dinners. Servants began to clean the floors. Myra stood alone. Her father approached her, and she saw the anger in his 4 eyes. Not anger at the nobles who had rejected her. Anger at her for existing, for being here, for embarrassing him. "I have made arrangements," the emperor said coldly. "There is a monastery on the outer rim. You will go there tomorrow. You will live quietly. You will not shame this family further." Myra felt her heart break, but she only nodded. "Yes, father." The emperor turned and walked away without another word. Myra watched him go. She thought about the monastery, a small building on a cold moon, far from everything. She would spend her short human life there, alone, forgotten. Perhaps that was what she deserved. The great doors of the hall suddenly opened. Everyone turned to look. A human man walked in. He was not tall by galactic standards, but he moved with confidence. He wore military armor that was scratched and dented from recent battle. His black hair was messy. His dark eyes scanned the room quickly, taking in everything. He looked tired, like he had not slept in days. Myra recognized the uniform, Terran Expeditionary Force, a human soldier. The court officials rushed toward him, confused and annoyed. "The ceremony is over," one of them said. "You are 3 days late, Commander." The human checked a device on his wrist. "My ship had engine trouble, and there was a small war on the border that needed finishing." He looked around the empty hall. "I was ordered to attend. I am attending." "There is no point. All selections have been made." The human's eyes moved across the room. They stopped when they found Myra, still standing alone by her pillar. He studied her for a long moment. "Who was that?" he asked. The official made a dismissive sound. "No one of importance. The Emperor's half-breed daughter. She was not selected." "Is she still available for bonding?" The official laughed. "You cannot be serious, Commander. She is." "Is she still available?" The laughter died. The official looked uncomfortable. "Technically, yes, but Commander Chen, you must understand, she is half-human, she is small and weak. She will not live long. Bonding with her will bring you no political advantage, no power, no wealth. She is worthless." Commander James Chen looked at Myra again. She met his eyes, too tired and hurt to look away. She expected to see pity, or disgust, or the same dismissal she had seen all day. Instead, she saw recognition, understanding, like he knew exactly how it felt to stand alone in a room full of people who thought you were nothing. "I want her," James said. The hall went silent. Emperor Valdris, who had been walking toward the exit, stopped and turned around. His face showed pure shock. "You want my daughter, my human daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" James walked across the hall toward Myra. His boots echoed on the crystal floor. He stopped in front of her and studied her face. Up close, Myra could see scars on his jaw and hands. This was a man who had seen many battles. "Because no one should stand alone," he said quietly, speaking only to her. "And because I think everyone in this room is blind." He held out his hand. Myra stared at it. Her mind was spinning. This made no sense. Humans were considered primitives by most galactic species. They had only joined the conquered 5 years ago. They had nothing to gain from bonding with her. But his hand was steady. His eyes were kind. She took his hand. The bonding was complete. Across the great hall, 100 noble creatures watched in confused silence as the unwanted princess walked out with the human soldier. Most of them shook their heads at the foolish primitive who had wasted his only selection on damaged goods. They did not understand. They did not know what humans were capable of. But they would learn. The journey to Earth took 6 days. Myra spent most of it in her small cabin on James's ship, afraid to come out. She did not know what to expect. She did not know why this human had chosen her. She kept waiting for him to change his mind. On the 3rd day, James knocked on her door. "You should eat something," he said through the metal. "The food is not great, but it keeps you alive." Myra opened the door slowly. James stood there holding 2 trays of simple food. He did not look disappointed or regretful. He just looked like a tired soldier who wanted to share a meal. They ate together in the ship's small common room. James told her about the border skirmish that had made him late. A group of pirates had attacked a human colony. His unit had been sent to stop them. It had taken longer than expected. "Were you hurt?" Myra asked quietly. James showed her a healing wound on his arm. "Nothing serious. Humans are harder to kill than we look." Myra did not know what to say to that. In the Valdrossian court, warriors never showed their wounds. It was considered shameful to admit that anyone had managed to hurt you. "Why did you choose me?" she finally asked. The question had been burning inside her for 3 days. James put down his food and thought about his answer. "When I walked into that hall, I saw a room full of powerful creatures playing political games, trading their children like property, measuring everyone by their usefulness." He looked at her. "And I saw you standing alone, trying to be invisible, because Everyone had decided you had no value. They were right, I have no value. No, James shook his head firmly. They were blind. I saw your eyes, Myra. When the official was explaining all the reasons why you were worthless, you were not crying. You were not begging. You were standing straight and accepting your fate with dignity. That takes more strength than most of those noble creatures will ever have. Myra did not know how to respond. No one had ever called her strong before. Also, James continued with a small smile, I read your file on the way to the ceremony. The official reports say you are uneducated and simple, but the palace servants told a different story. They said you sneak into the engineering sections at night. They said you fixed a broken water system that the royal engineers could not repair. They said you taught yourself to read technical manuals in 3 different languages. Myra felt her face grow warm. She had tried so hard to hide her interests. Engineering and science were not suitable subjects for a princess. Her tutors had forbidden her from studying such things. I was just curious, she whispered. Curiosity is how humans built our civilization. Never apologize for being curious. When the ship finally landed on Earth, Myra was terrified. She had heard stories about the human homeworld, a primitive planet with poisonous air and dangerous weather, a place where creatures died from simple diseases, a world that most galactic species considered barely livable. What she found was something completely different. James took her to his family home in a place called Vancouver. It was a city built between mountains and ocean, filled with tall buildings and green parks and millions of humans going about their lives. The air smelled like salt and trees. The sun was warm on her skin. His family was waiting for them. James's grandmother was a tiny woman with white hair and sharp eyes. She looked at Myra and immediately started speaking in rapid words that Myra did not understand. She says you are too thin, James translated. She says she will fix that. His sister, Maya, was a young woman with James's same dark eyes. She grabbed Myra's hand and pulled her inside the house, already talking about clothes and music and something called movies. His father was a tall man with gray hair and a straight back. He had been an admiral in the Terran fleet before he retired. He studied Myra carefully, the way a soldier studies a new recruit. Welcome to the family, he said simply. Myra did not understand. In the Valdrossian court, she had always been an embarrassment, a mistake to be hidden. Here, these humans who had never met her were treating her like she belonged. The weeks that followed were the strangest and happiest of her life. James's grandmother taught her to cook human food. They spent hours in the kitchen making something called dumplings. The old woman did not care that Myra only had 2 arms. She just showed her how to fold the dough correctly and laughed when Myra made mistakes. Maya took her shopping and to something called a coffee shop, where young humans gathered to talk and laugh. For the first time, Myra had something like a friend her own age. Maya asked questions about space and other species, treating Myra's background as interesting rather than shameful. The admiral invited her to his study and showed her maps of human space. He asked her opinion on defensive strategies, and when she pointed out a weakness in one of his fleet positions, his eyes lit up with respect. Your official file says you have no military training, he said. I do not, but I read a lot and I watch. James was right about you. Myra also discovered human technology. It was different from what she had known. Valdrossian engineering was elegant and complex. Human engineering was simple and practical. But when Myra looked closer, she saw clever solutions that galactic engineers had never considered. She found herself taking apart small devices just to see how they worked. One evening, she showed James a design for improving his ship's engine efficiency by 12%. This is brilliant, he said, studying her calculations. How did you figure this out? Your engines waste energy in the conversion process. Valdrossian systems do the same thing, but no one ever tries to fix it because the waste is considered acceptable. I just thought about it differently." James stared at her for a long moment, then he started to laugh. "What is funny?" Myra asked, worried she had done something wrong. "Nothing, everything." He shook his head. "The galaxy thinks you are worthless, Myra, and you just casually redesigned an engine system that our best scientists have been struggling with for years." He sent her designs to the Terran Engineering Corps the next day. Within a week, they were requesting a meeting with her. For the first time in her life, Myra felt valued. But happiness, she had learned, never lasted forever. 6 months after her arrival on Earth, news came from the Valdrossian Empire. Her eldest sister, Princess Thara, had died suddenly. The official cause was a rare disease, but James's intelligence contacts told a different story. Poison. Assassination. 2 weeks later, Princess Vila died in a shuttle accident. Then Princess Cassa. Then Princess Una. One by one, Myra's sisters were being eliminated. Someone was clearing the path to the Valdrossian throne, removing every heir who might claim it. "They do not know about me," Myra realized, "or they do not think I matter." James held her hand. "You matter, and we need to be ready because eventually someone will remember that the 7th princess is still alive." Myra looked at this human who had chosen her when no one else would. This family that had welcomed her without question. This world that had shown her she had value. She had something to protect now. She had a home. And she was beginning to understand that humans did not give up the things they loved without a fight. The assassins came on a quiet Tuesday evening. The Chen family was having dinner together, as they did every week. James's grandmother had made her special noodles. Maya was telling a funny story about her work. The admiral was pretending to be annoyed but was secretly enjoying every moment. Myra sat among them, feeling the warmth of belonging that she still could not quite believe was real. 8 months on Earth had changed her. She smiled more. She laughed more. She had started to believe that maybe she deserved happiness. The first warning was when the lights went out. James was on his feet instantly. Years of combat training took over. He pulled a weapon from under the table and pushed Myra toward the interior of the house. "Safe room now." "What is happening?" Glass shattered somewhere in the house. The admiral had already grabbed his own weapon and was moving toward the sound. Maya was pulling the grandmother toward the back stairs. 3 shapes burst through the windows. Myra had seen Cathari before. The reptilian species was known throughout the galaxy as the finest assassins money could buy. They were fast, silent, and deadly. Their black and gold scales seemed to absorb light. Their claws could cut through metal. These 3 moved like shadows, professional, efficient. They had clearly done this many times before. What they had not counted on was the Chen family. The first assassin went for James, probably identifying him as the primary threat. It was a mistake. The second assassin moved toward Myra, but the admiral intercepted him with a speed that seemed impossible for a man his age. The third headed for the women in the back of the house. That one met Grandmother Chen. The old woman was 87 years old. She was small enough that Myra could have lifted her with one arm, but she had been born in a village where every child learned to defend themselves, and she had survived 3 wars before James was even born. She hit the assassin in the face with a heavy iron pan. The Cathari stumbled, more surprised than hurt. Grandmother Chen did not give it time to recover. She swung again and again, shouting in her native language, driving the creature back toward the kitchen. Maya had found her own weapon. She activated the home defense system she had helped design. Steel shutters slammed down over the windows. Alarms screamed. Emergency lights filled the house with red glow. The assassins had expected a soft target. They had expected frightened humans who would die easily. They had been very wrong. James fought like Myra had never seen anyone fight before. The Cathari was faster than him, stronger than him, with claws that could have taken off his head. But James did not care. He took wounds that would have stopped any sensible creature. A claw raked across his chest. He kept fighting. A blade cut his arm. He kept fighting. The galaxy believed humans were weak. They looked at the small bodies, the lack of natural weapons, the short lifespans. They did not understand. Humans were persistent predators. In ancient times, they had hunted animals not by being faster or stronger, but by simply never stopping. They would chase prey for hours, for days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. That instinct was still there, buried deep in their blood. A human protecting their family did not give up, ever. The admiral grappled with his opponent, using techniques that came from decades of combat experience. He was old and wounded, but he knew exactly where to strike, exactly how to move. The Cathari was stronger, but strength meant nothing against someone who understood weakness. Myra watched from the doorway of the safe room, her heart pounding. She wanted to help, but she knew she would only be in the way. She had no combat training. She was exactly what everyone had always said she was. Small, weak, useless. Then she saw the second assassin break away from the admiral and run toward the stairs, toward where Maya was protecting the grandmother, toward the people who had welcomed Myra into their home. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She grabbed a piece of broken furniture and threw herself at the assassin. It was stupid. It was suicidal. The Cathari could have killed her with a single swipe. But she surprised it. For just 1 second, the creature hesitated, confused by this small half-human who should have been cowering in fear. 1 second was enough. The admiral was there, driving a blade into the assassin's neck. The creature fell. Across the room, James finally brought down his opponent. It had cost him. Blood covered half his body, but he was still standing. The third assassin, seeing its companions fall, tried to flee. It crashed through a window and vanished into the night. For a long moment, no one moved. The only sounds were heavy breathing and the distant wail of alarms. Then Grandmother Chen walked out of the kitchen, still holding her pan, and announced that she needed to make tea. Maya started to laugh, then the admiral, then James, even though it clearly hurt him to do so. Even Myra found herself laughing, the terror and relief mixing together into something that felt like madness. They were alive, all of them, somehow. Later, after medical teams had arrived and treated their wounds, after security forces had taken away the bodies, after 100 questions had been asked and answered, Myra found James sitting alone in the ruined living room. His chest was wrapped in bandages. His arm was in a healing cast. He looked exhausted, but he smiled when he saw her. "You threw a chair at a Cathari assassin," he said. "It was a table leg, actually. That is the bravest and stupidest thing I have ever seen." Myra sat down next to him. "Why did you fight so hard? You could have died. All of you could have died for me." James looked at her with those tired, kind eyes. "Myra, when I chose you at that ceremony, I was not just making a political bond. I was making you part of my family, and humans do not abandon family. Even when it almost kills you. Especially then." He took her hand with his uninjured arm. "My grandmother once told me that family is not about blood. It is about the people you choose to love and protect. She chose her husband. My father chose my mother. Maya chooses her friends, and I chose you." Myra felt tears on her face. Not tears of sadness, something else, something warm. "The assassin that escaped will report back," she said. "They will know that killing me will not be easy. They will send more." "Yes. I should leave. I am putting your family in danger." James tightened his grip on her hand. "You are not going anywhere. Whatever comes next, we face it together. That is what family does." From the kitchen, they could hear Grandmother Chen singing as she made tea. Maya was helping clean up the broken glass. The admiral was already on communications with military intelligence, coordinating a response. The Kethari assassin would deliver a message to whoever had hired it. The message was simple. The seventh princess was protected by humans, and humans did not let go of the people they loved, no matter what it cost them. The message came 3 months after the assassination attempt. Emperor Valdris was dead. Myra had not spoken to her father since the day James had chosen her. She had not expected to feel anything when she heard the news, but she did. A strange, complicated sadness for the man who had never loved her, who had always seen her as a mistake. Now that mistake was the only one left. All 6 of her sisters were dead. The conspiracy that had killed them had been careful and patient. Poison, accidents, illnesses that came too quickly to be natural. One by one, every legitimate heir to the Valdrossian throne had been eliminated. Every heir except Myra. "You are the Empress now," James said as they watched the news broadcasts. "By law, by blood, the throne belongs to you. I'm half human. They will never accept me." They might not have a choice. James was right. The Valdrossian constitution was very clear. The throne passed through blood. Without any surviving children of the emperor, the empire would fall into chaos, civil war, maybe complete collapse. Some of the noble houses were already fighting. Old rivalries that had been held back by the emperor's power were breaking free. Fleets were mobilizing. Planets were choosing sides. And at the center of it all was Prince Kethter, the same Kethari prince who had chosen Myra's eldest sister at the bonding ceremony. The same prince whose people had sent assassins to Earth. He had declared himself the true heir, claiming that his bond with Princess Thara gave him rights to the throne. He had support from the other conspirators, the noble houses who had helped eliminate the imperial family. "He will never allow you to claim your birthright," the admiral said during a strategy meeting with Terran officials. "You are the only legal barrier to his power." "What are my options?" Myra asked. "You could stay here on Earth, give up your claim, live a quiet life. And let the creature who murdered my sisters rule my people." The admiral smiled slightly. "I told James you had a fighter's spirit. The other option is to go back, challenge his claim directly, force the matter before the Galactic conquered. They will kill me the moment I arrive." "Not if you have protection." James leaned forward. "Terran law allows for armed diplomatic protection. If you go as a formal claimant with a Terran escort, attacking you would be an act of war against Earth." Myra understood. The conspirators had not worried about killing a forgotten princess on a primitive planet, but openly murdering the heir to an empire while under human protection. That would bring consequences even they could not ignore. 2 weeks later, Myra returned to Thessara Prime. The great hall where she had once stood alone was now filled with tension. Representatives from 100 worlds had gathered to witness the resolution. On one side stood Prince Kethter with his supporters. On the other stood Myra with James and a small delegation of human diplomats. "This is insulting," Kethter announced to the assembly. "A half-breed creature comes to claim an empire. She is barely even Valdrossian. She was raised by primitives on a backward planet. She knows nothing of our ways." Myra stood straight, her small frame dwarfed by the massive aliens around her. She had been terrified of this moment, but she had also been preparing for it. "I am the daughter of Emperor Valdris," she said clearly. "I carry his blood. By law, the throne is mine. Law can be changed. Blood can be diluted. You are an abomination, princess. A mistake that should have been corrected long ago." Myra felt the old shame rising inside her, but she pushed it down. She was not the frightened girl who had hidden behind pillars anymore. "Then let us settle this the old way," she said. "Trial by combat." The hall went silent. Trial by combat was an ancient Valdrossian tradition. two champions fighting until one could no longer continue. The winner's claim would be recognized by all. It had not been used in centuries. Kethter's eyes gleamed with cruel pleasure. You would allow your fate to be decided by battle. Very well, I accept. He gestured, and a massive Kethari warrior stepped forward. This was Vethrak, the legendary blade master. He had trained for over 200 years. He had killed more than 1,000 opponents in ritual combat. He was considered unbeatable. Choose your champion, half-breed. Choose who will die for you. Myra turned to James. He was already stepping forward. I will fight. The laughter that filled the hall was cruel and loud. A human fighting a Kethari blade master. It was absurd. It was suicide. Several delegates called out that this was a waste of time, that the human would die in seconds. Vethrak studied James with cold, reptilian eyes. I have never killed a human before. It will be an interesting experience. I have killed Kethari before, James replied calmly. It was not that interesting. The arena was prepared in the center of the hall. Ancient rules were read aloud. The combat would continue until one fighter could no longer stand or surrendered. No interference was allowed. Death was acceptable. James removed his formal jacket and stepped into the arena. He was given a traditional blade, balanced for human hands. Compared to the massive weapon Vethrak carried, it looked like a toy. James, Myra grabbed his arm before he could move away. You do not have to do this. I can surrender. I can give up my claim. Your life is worth more than a throne. James looked at her with steady eyes. Remember what I told you about humans, about how we never stop. Yes. Watch. The signal was given. The combat began. Vethrak moved like water. His blade cut through the air faster than Myra's eyes could follow. James barely dodged the first strike, and the second, and the third. The crowd watched with growing excitement. This was entertainment, a primitive being slowly destroyed by a master. But something was wrong. The seconds became minutes. James was bleeding from a dozen small wounds. His clothing was torn. His breathing was heavy, but he was still standing, still fighting. And he was learning. Humans, Myra remembered, were adaptive creatures. Their brains were designed to find patterns, to predict movements, to improve with every experience. James had never fought a Kethari blade master before, but with every exchange, he understood a little more. Vethrak began to look frustrated. His strikes were still faster, still more powerful, but they were not landing as cleanly. The human was adjusting, adapting, refusing to die according to schedule. Just fall, the blade master growled. Accept your death with dignity. James spat blood onto the arena floor. Humans do not know how to quit. It is a character flaw. The fight continued. 5 minutes 10:15. Vethrak was breathing hard now. He had expected a quick kill. Instead, he was facing something his 200 years of training had never prepared him for, an opponent who simply would not stop. On ancient Earth, humans had been pursuit predators. They did not win through speed or strength. They won through endurance, through stubbornness, through the simple refusal to give up. James was wounded. He was exhausted. By any reasonable measure, he should have collapsed long ago. But he was still standing. And now, for the first time, Vethrak looked uncertain. James saw the opening. 4 minutes of punishment had taught him exactly how the blade master moved, exactly where his balance shifted, exactly when his guard dropped. He moved. His blade found the gap between the scales of Vethrak's neck. The legendary blade master fell. The hall was absolutely silent. 1,000 creatures stared at the bloody human standing over the fallen Kethari champion. They could not process what they had just witnessed. James turned to face Prince Kethter. Blood dripped from his face, his arms, his chest. His legs were shaking from exhaustion, but his voice was clear and strong. The trial is complete. Myra Valdris is the rightful empress. Kethter's face twisted with fury. For a moment, Myra thought he would order an attack anyway, but even his supporters were stepping back, looking at the human with new eyes. This small, primitive creature had defeated their greatest warrior. What else were humans capable of? Myra walked into the arena and stood beside James. She took his bloody hand in hers and raised it high. "I am Empress Myra Valdris," she announced to the assembly. "And this is my consort, the champion who proved my claim. Anyone who wishes to challenge my right may face him." No one moved. No one spoke. And for the first time in her life, Myra saw fear in the eyes of those who had always looked down on her. Not fear of her. Fear of the human standing beside her. The coronation of Empress Myra Valdris was the most watched event in galactic history. Billions of creatures across 1,000 worlds watched as the small, half-human princess placed the ancient crown upon her head. She wore traditional Valdrosian robes, modified to fit her two-armed frame. Beside her stood James Chen, now officially Prince Consort, his wounds still healing from the trial combat. The galaxy did not know what to make of it. For centuries, the Valdrosian Empire had been ruled by perfect, glowing beings who lived for 500 years. Now their throne belonged to someone who looked more human than Valdrosian, someone who would be lucky to see 80 years, someone who had been raised on a primitive planet by a family of warriors and grandmothers who fought assassins with cooking pans. The noble houses watched and waited. Many of them still supported Prince Kethter. They believed this strange new empress would fail quickly. She had no training, no experience, no understanding of imperial politics. They were wrong. Myra's first act as empress was to abolish the most cruel parts of the bonding ceremony. Never again would children stand in halls waiting to be rejected. Never again would those deemed imperfect be sent away to monasteries to be forgotten. "Every person has value," she declared to the imperial court. "Every person deserves a chance to prove themselves. This empire will no longer throw away its children." Her second act was to establish formal alliance with Earth. Trade routes opened between the two civilizations. Human technology began flowing into Valdrosian space. Simple, practical solutions to problems that elegant Valdrosian engineering had never solved. Within a year, the imperial economy had grown by 15%. Within 2 years, human advisors were working alongside Valdrosian officials throughout the government. The old nobles complained that it was embarrassing, having primitives in positions of influence, but they could not argue with the results. Myra also kept her promise to James and his family. She hunted down every conspirator who had murdered her sisters. Prince Kethter tried to run. He had planned his escape carefully, hiding resources across 3 star systems. He believed he was safe. He was not. James personally led the mission to capture him. One human warship against an entire hidden fleet. The galaxy thought it was impossible. They still did not understand humans. James found Kethter on a frozen moon at the edge of known space. The prince was dragged back to Thessara Prime in chains and put on trial before the entire Concord. The evidence of his crimes was overwhelming. The assassination of 6 princesses, the attempted murder of Myra, the conspiracy to steal an empire. He was executed according to Valdrosian law. One by one, the other conspirators faced justice. Some tried to flee, some tried to fight, some tried to beg for mercy. None of them escaped. The galaxy watched, and slowly they began to understand something important. Humans did not just protect their families. They avenged them, with patience, determination, and absolute commitment. Making an enemy of a human was a mistake you only made once. Years passed. The Valdrosian Empire changed under Myra's rule. Not everything was perfect. Some reforms failed. Some nobles never stopped resisting. Some days were filled with frustration and setbacks. But the empire grew stronger, more fair, more just. And Myra was no longer alone. She and James had 3 children together, human Valdrossian hybrids who inherited traits from both species. Their eldest daughter had her father's stubborn determination and her mother's sharp mind. Their twin sons had 4 arms like true Valdrossians, but their grandmother Chen's love of cooking. The children were raised between 2 worlds. They learned Valdrossian history and human stories. They practiced diplomatic protocols and how to throw a proper punch. Grandmother Chen, now over 90 years old, insisted on teaching them to make dumplings. "A person who cannot feed themselves is not truly free," she said, just as she had told Myra so many years ago. The Admiral did not live to see the twins born. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family, with the satisfaction of knowing that his son had changed the galaxy. Maya married and had children of her own, cousins for Myra's children to play with during visits to Earth. The bond between the human homeworld and the Valdrossian Empire became something more than alliance. It became family. One evening, decades into her reign, Myra stood with James on the balcony of the Imperial Palace. Below them, the capital city sparkled with lights. Ships moved through the sky, carrying people and goods between worlds that had once been enemies. "Do you ever regret it?" Myra asked, "choosing me that day?" James, older now with gray in his hair, took her hand. "That is the easiest question anyone has ever asked me. No, never, not for one moment. You could have had a normal life, a human wife, human children. I have exactly the life I wanted." He looked at her with the same kind eyes she had seen in that great hall so long ago. "When I walked in that day, I saw a girl that everyone had decided was worthless. And I thought, if this is what they throw away, imagine what they are missing. And now I know I was right. You changed an empire, Myra. You changed the galaxy. All because one person decided to see what everyone else ignored." Myra leaned against him, feeling the warmth of his presence. She thought about her sisters, whom she had never really known, her mother who had died giving her life, her father who had never loved her. She thought about the grandmother who had taught her to cook, the sister who had become her friend, the admiral who had seen her potential, the family who had welcomed her without question. She thought about the lonely girl who had stood behind a pillar, trying to be invisible, believing she was nothing. That girl was gone now. She had become an empress, a mother, a leader. But more importantly, she had become loved. "James." "Yes. Thank you for seeing me." He smiled and pulled her closer. "Always." Far across the galaxy, on 100 different worlds, other species were beginning to look at humans differently. These strange, small creatures with their short lives and their stubborn hearts. They formed attachments that seemed irrational. They protected people who were not their blood. They kept fighting long after any sensible creature would have surrendered. The galaxy had dismissed them as primitives, weak, insignificant. Now they knew better. Humanity's strength was not in their bodies or their technology or their weapons. It was in their hearts. It was in their absolute refusal to abandon the people they loved. It was in their ability to see value where others saw nothing. And it was in the simple truth that James Chen had understood from the very beginning. No one should stand alone. In the palace nursery, Myra's children were sleeping. The future rulers of an empire, with human blood and Valdrossian heritage, dreaming of the worlds they would one day help shape. Outside, the stars burned bright and eternal. And somewhere in the great hall of Thessara Prime, in the exact spot where a lonely girl had once stood waiting to be rejected, a small memorial had been placed. A simple stone with simple words. "For all the unwanted ones, may you find your home." Myra had written those words herself. She had found her home. and she would make sure that others found theirs too. That was the human way. That was her way. And it always would be.